Okay, welcome everyone to the 2025 PIBBSS Symposium. Our speaker, Alexandre, will be talking about humans and AI.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the presentation. And yeah, I will talk about why I think humans will keep doing hard things. And I think previously my talk was called AI attunement as a better target than AI alignment. And I decided to change for this more I think clearer framing, but the ideas are the same. And I think I'm like I'm like a bit of an outlier for this symposium today, as like most of the talks are about making up, but I'll not talk about making up. If you try to find the connection with making up, there's no connection. I just will be traveling for the third day, which would be the more normal scheduling for my talk. Great. So the the talk is divided in two. The first part, which is like the biggest part, is about problem, and I'll try to lay down this argument. So there are like four premises, and the conclusion is we need to aim at humans doing hard things, no matter AI progress. Okay, so the first premise is like premise A, human growth happens through direct contact with the world. Premise B, direct contact with the world is hard. Premise C, human growth is necessary for good futures. And premise D, technology can help, but cannot replace humans having direct contact with the world. So it's a bit of a wall of text, but like it laid down my whole argument in one slide, and this is what I will go through to start with. And I think it's a pretty controversial statement, and it changes a lot on like the picture we think about when we think of like what does success look like if we successfully navigate this like AI age. Um, if this argument is true, then like if humans still need to do hard things, it's like very different and pretty, I think, underrepresented in like the story we hear of like what does navigating AI look like. And then I'll make the second part of the talk will be much shorter, like a bit shorter, will be about solution, where I argue that instead that the goal should be to set up social structure to align AI advances to the process of human growth, and not to any set of static set of human values. And for this, we can create communities to assimilate AI progress within human practice. And I finish with a case study of Butterfly, a prototype AI tool that like support human growth, which like was like a prototype I've been working on this summer. Great. So let's start with the main argument, and I'll start talking about human growth happens through direct contact with the world and what I mean by that. So I'll start with a short video of Jacob Collier. Great. So why do I start like that? Because this music is cool, but also because I think this represents, like, this is a clear example of what contact with the world means in my head. Like this is, and the key quote that goes with this video from Jacob Collier, so the artist that is like very famous for this sort of like vocal arrangement with like very complex harmonies, as we just listened. And what he's doing here is like he's using microtones, which are like some tones of music that are like not the kind of note you would do on the piano. It's like in between notes of what you would play on a piano. And what's interesting is like Jacob Collier says in a documentary, at the time I didn't understand what I was doing, but I was doing microtone. So just through like extensive practice, which is what I call contact with the world, by like playing music, listening carefully to the music produced, listening to other music people play, like he was able to like find his like cool new kind of music that is like microtone, like using microtones that you like no theory about. And that's an example of like in this particular domain of music, learning a new skill through contact with the world. Um, and here it's like direct because like unmediated. It's like directly just purely listening to music and producing it. And another quote that I think is interesting, that's like is the first point I want to show is like when you have techniques, the technique will give your ear IDs. So importantly, what we consider mastery is often the know-how, how to produce music, but importantly, it's also the knowing what kind of music makes sense, is valuable among like the big space of music this man could produce. What is the one that he will explore? Um, and mastery is both of it. It's not just knowing to do the whole space of music, but also knowing where to choose which music to produce. And these are two things that often are decoupled. Knowing how is often seen as like knowledge, and knowing what is often seen as values. What do you prefer over something else? And my what I want to bring here is to say like the two are actually much more connected than we often realize, and that it doesn't make sense to decouple them when they are embedded in a practice, and that the know-how and the know-what are very close and core to what makes mastery. So this is the first output of what does contact with the world means and how this leads to human growth, meaning evolution of values and knowledge. Another thing that contact with the world and growth looks like is internalized knowledge. Here there is like this example of like Audrey Tang that says, I really wanted a personal computer I can practice programming on. And the mother describes that one day I saw Audrey there drawing a keyboard on a piece of paper, then hitting delete and then taking an eraser and erase it all away. Meaning Audrey Tang really wanted to practice programming and like internalized how like a computer could work. So like they emulated it on paper. And this is like not something that they thought about. They were like coding likely in their head. They were like thinking about the code they would write, but because they internalized the way the computer worked, they were able to like fully simulate it out of paper. And this shows like another point that I think is important is that often when experts thinking, when experts like thinks, it feels like they just come up with great ideas out of nowhere. But in reality, what was happening is like they come up with great ideas because they internalized a model of the world, or through practice, through contact with the world, they like their ideas are like filtered and constrained by what they know of the medium, what they know of music, what they know of coding. And so expertise happens in the background, which is like a very important piece of human development, is like what is foreground often becomes crystallized knowledge that will act in the background, freeing the load for new foreground to exist. And I want to put this together as like a toy model of human development, where like through practice, you develop skills. So both knowing how and knowing what in different domains that are like potentially overlapping like that. And then you have like a specific domain that's the conceptual verbal domain, which is the one I use right now. I'm like saying words to like communicate with you. But the words don't make sense if they don't connect to specific experiences. So there's all like the pink link here. For instance, when I talk about microtones, I actually don't play a lot of music. So my link here is like very thin because my experience in music is very thin. So I will not be able to talk about precisely the kind of music Jacob Collier is producing because I just don't have this experience. So I'll not be able to like maintain a connection between the words I use to describe the music and the experience I'm pointing to. And within like each domain, you have like internalized knowledge, so this know-how, but also the know-what. So and all this like model acting in the background that then can propagate to the conceptual domain, and I can refer meaning to like things of the experience that maybe I know you share, which is why we are able to communicate. And within the conceptual domain, I can also make claims, formulate arguments, reflect, that will can then like help me guide my practice in like some domain. So it's extremely simplified, but I think it will be important for illustrating some things in the rest of the talk. Um, and yeah, one of my key messages here is like human growth encompasses value and knowledge. It happens through contact with the world, as we've seen, and general values. Often, what we say, oh, I value liberty or freedom, or I value autonomy. like those worlds are abstraction from domain-specific direct knowledge, as we've seen before. And here, like when we say like often human values, I want to like to 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 move from the conceptual plane to like the values are encompassed in the learning experience that is happening in the background, and that's often the general value we pursue, like liberty or freedom, are often misguided because they are too general and like a sort of like average over many domain, many lived experiences. Okay. Second point, which I think I will go pretty fast, is direct contact with the world is hard. Um, because successful contact with the world involves conflicts between like an old worldview and incoming information, creating an inner crisis and need letting go. I think that the best example of this is a scientific crisis where like a new paradigm or new experiments, experimental results come challenge the existing paradigm, leading to a crisis where some people will like adapt the old paradigm to accommodate for the new observation, and or other like build completely new paradigm to explain the incompatible, like the observation incompatible with the old domain. And I think this happened at like an individual level too. It's just a very useful picture, but this requires like a conflict between the new and the old, and the need to like let go of like frames that have been useful so far. And learning is made of like such phases. Um, another Another point is the difference between epistemics and attunement, where like it's not only about things you can say simply in words. For instance, if you decide to go vegan, like you could like have read of like all the book about animal suffering, but suddenly when you decide to jump and say, oh wow, suddenly I realize that animal suffering is unacceptable and I will decide to go vegan. It's just an example. You might not have learned any new facts that will make you jump to actually take action and realize the extent of maybe the suffering of animals. Um, but there's something in you, a shift that happens that is not about epistemics, but that is about attunement, which as defined by like Joe Carl Smith in like one recent post, where like the two are like he defined attunement as opposition to like epistemics in this sense of like there are shifts in point of view, in knowledge that are not about simply like propositional knowledge. So this is hard. It means contact with the world, like the lesson you learn as an individual, cannot easily be shared with like someone else because words are not enough. And finally, it requires repeated practice, need for a long period of sustained effort, like learning an instrument or meditation, and it's pretty hard. Like this requires time to integrate, yeah, and commitment. Um, then human growth, and so right from now I will use human growth and contact with the world as like basically synonyms, as like I think the two are like closely connected as I showed before. So also that I'll talk about why I think human growth is necessary for good futures. And in particular, I'll show that no human growth or no contact with the world are likely to lead to bad outcomes. So I'll talk more about the like contraposé, the opposite statement that shows the same thing. So first, like a know-how failure of like irrelevance from disconnection with the world. Maybe you know this XKCD comic where you have a manager that asks like a developer to like, oh, if the user take a photo, check whether it's a national park. And like, sure, it takes a few hours. Oh, and check whether the photo is of a bird. And here, oh, you need a research team in 5 years. It's a bit outdated now. You can recognize if a photo of a bird really easily because AI advanced. But it shows an important point, I think, that like without experience with this manager, which is clearly disconnected from the technical reality, ideas just don't make sense. And even if there's the greatest team to execute, you will not never like understand what's happening on the ground, nor you will be able to like give good direction. So all your like control loop of observation and control are just cut because you don't know what's happening on the ground. And that's an example of like a lack of experience, lack of direct contact with the world, lack of growth. And if this continues to happen, where like AIs becomes the role of like the software engineer and humans are more and more like the manager, humans will become less and less relevant. Um, and to keep relevant, you need to keep the growth and the experience coming in. Another point is I think maybe more subtle is like a know what failure, where even if you have experience, you can be disconnected from pursuing the like values, the domain specific values, because you've been like trapped in the conceptual domain. So here, like two examples. One is burnout. For instance, someone that has been pursuing to like make a lot of money and then end up burned out because they made the money, but they're not happy because they fail to meet and to listen to like the motivation of their more like visceral motivation, the one that comes from the inside, that comes from like the lived experience that have been integrated through practice, through just experience throughout their life, and they thought that pursuing money was the thing they wanted, but they didn't really listen to pieces of themselves that were looking for something else, because they got to like they pursued a concept instead of like pursuing a more like fluffy type of motivation that doesn't fit well in any concept that you just need to listen to, like, oh, what do I really want actually? It's a bit similar to like a startup running out of runway without finding customer, of like they just failed to produce value. They like used money, resources without finding a point where they were able to find value. And here's like a more subtle kind, but very important type of like failure from lack of listening, lack of direct contact, at a value level where like you were able to successfully do things in the world. So it's not a know-how problem anymore, but you were disconnected from like what really mattered, which can be, in my opinion, like an even worse outcome from like lack of contact, lack of growth, which here is like for the value growth. And eventually like this lead to like disempowerment risk and risk of stasis, of collective growth, because individual human growth is linked to collective civilization, moral and knowledge growth, and can lead to like moral catastrophes like totalitarianism, etc., which are like prime example of getting getting trapped in like a conceptual framework of totalitarianism without any attunement, any like emphasis put on like the experience lived by the people under totalitarian regime. Okay, and then my final point of my argument is that technology can help but cannot replace humans having direct contact with the world. And I think this is maybe the less fleshed out point of my argument, though the rest are still like a bit blurry. But I'll try to go through why I think this is the case. First, there is an agency problem of like, even if you think you advance technology super far enough, you have like aligned AI super intelligence, and you have like an AI coaching like humans, and then you can ask, oh, where does the idea come from? And I think there's a very fine line between manipulation and empowerment. So here, like manipulation is devil, and empowerment, someone like Socrates, that was like really good at making people think by themselves, by just asking questions. Though question can also be manipulative, of course. Like just asking questions is never a guarantee of like purely empowerment. Um, and and here, like I think it's really important to see like even the wide, like the very smart, like AGI you create, like humans will still need to like for the growth to be meaningful, humans need to find the solution by themselves. Like if you give all the solution to the human, like it will never be like a true human growth. It will be like the AI manipulating the human to get to certain conclusion, like more like a guru. And the line is very thin. And human practice is really like I think the keys that like differentiate between a mentor and a guru, whether like it's really about the human or it's like the human being manipulated. And I think it's a very fine line that cannot be resolved in all generality and needs like human practice to get this right. And another problem is the integration problem. Even if you have like a wise AI that is like aligned, so like you outsource this decision to this wise AI, even if it's like a chip like plugged on your brain that can like you can just think about a question, you get the answer from the wise AI, it cannot replace integrated knowledge. Um, because reminds this idea of like of that like expertise happen in the background. So even if you have like really fast access to this wise AI call, you'll never actually integrate the knowledge and the wisdom, and you will like be stuck in like very like you'll never have the good ideas because you'll just have this external call, and this will not like help you guide your thinking through the wisdom. You'll just have access to like points of wisdom that goes back and forth. And humans still need to practice. And for this, this is the picture between like either you outsource a decision or you have a coach that like gets you through the learning so you can take decision by yourself. And again, no general answer, it's just like matter of practice. So I hope I convince you that humans will keep doing hard things in the future. And I think this is like why I think it's important. I think it's like underappreciated part of the AI alignment target, which often consider like human values in like full generality. And of course, many people talk about what this means, but I think this is a very important piece to keep in mind. Um, and this complements the classic AI governance and technical AI safety targets that are like still important, but I think this like changes the landscape of like other things we should be aiming at. And I claim that like one thing this changes and like new targets this creates are to set up social structure to align AI advances to the process of human growth. Of like by default, AI will be like a super assistant made to execute things. This doesn't lead to like human growth, as I shown in like the example before. You need this integration, this human practice, and for this we need to assimilate the AI advances into new practices and new crafts, because that's how like human keeps the agency over the artifact we create. And we can also find hooks, so some like place we can turn like AI abilities into increased contact with the world. For instance, example are like very basic, like an AI tutor, AI coach, like some application like that could be great of like current AI abilities that were not possible before, and that could like make this contact with the world, this human growth better. So those are, I think, an underappreciated consequences to like get to like good future with AI. And I'll present this concept of community of practices, which are a way to support technical development, individual and collective growth, which I think are the kind of social structure we should aim at developing around AI tools. So what are a community of practice? So let's take the making of a music instrument. So first you have a technical object like a saxophone that you iterate on, you like tweak the technical object using engineering. But then you have to learn to play it yourself. It's the first time a saxophone has been made in the history of mankind. So you have to learn to play it, and by learning to play it, maybe you like see some defect, and you like tweak the technical object. And as like you have a more mature music instrument, you develop group practices, and you define crafts, you define music styles, what is good and bad music within this style, but maybe bad music for one style is good music for another style. And you create this like shared practices. That is like where the community aspect comes into play. And the three benefits of communities of practices is first, make room for subtle transmission of knowledge where everyone is a practitioner. So in the example of saxophone, you will have like then a tight link between the word that we use to describe the saxophone, and the experience. So this is why like every domain develop its own jargon. It's because we are all practitioners in a community of practice, such that we can use more words to describe the practice we have, and get like deeper and deeper into practice. It's also important, just purely a bit basic, but like purely for motivation, to support individual growth through hardships, and to define a craft, a set of values to follow that is valid locally, that is bounded, it's not universal values, though it can influence like general values. And it makes individual knowledge compound through the community effect. And this is not something radically new. I think community of practices already exist around AI tools. I have like two main examples. One is Comfy UI. So it's this it's an interface to make flow charts that route different different AI image generation model through like each other to like get to like very complex workflow to like from stable diffusion you like denoise to get to a control net and then like use this like other style image to get there to transfer a character or like stuff like that. Very complex. And it's what's cool like it's not linked to any specific AI generated model like image generation model. It's like an interface to manipulate all of it, and you have like a very active community around that. And then the second example is Janus and Pliny the Liberator, among others, that are like doing in-depth analysis or like exploration of the different personas one can interact in like LLMs, got like very troubling conclusions. And there's again like a whole communities around that are like trying, oh, if you use this type of prompts, you get this type of results. Which I think are very valuable contribution to the space. And I wanted to also include this of like failure of a community of practice. Is this like recent report from Meta, where like they found that like coders that are like using AI tools to like for programming are slowed down by using the tool compared to what they are slowed down full stop. And they expect it to be, of course, they expect it to be accelerated through the use of AI tools. So it's an example of disconnect between the felt sense and actual results of using AI tools like Cursor. Cursor, I think Code Cloud was not out for the experiment, but this is an example of like there wasn't enough study or practice to be sure this AI tool got properly integrated into human practice, because you have like this gap, which I think is a sign of failure of developing an appropriate practice around the tool. And it also shows that like not all tools come equal, and that the different tools you create shape the practice. And maybe that even tool is not the right word, that maybe instrument, as the analogy I've been using a lot, are maybe a better term. So first, I'll go through many distinctions of like what are the different type of tools and different kind of practice that can happen around it. First, there is an interface problem that expressivity is not enough. We need interface that allow for human mastery. Like even if you could make any image pixel by pixel on Paint, Photoshop is much better interface to develop mastery because it's primitive and it has been worked to like allow for much more complex operation than just pixel editing, which though pixelating is enough, it's a bit like Turing complete. Like you still care about a good programming language. You care about also making tools that make thoughts sharper, even when you don't use the tool. You can simulate an abacus in your mind. So you know this very old tool where you like move beads on like rows to do arithmetics. Like people that are expert at using abacus can like close their eye and like simulate doing mental calculation in their mind abacus. And so they are much faster at doing like mental arithmetic, even when they don't have the tool. But a calculator, of course, don't have this property. And we want more of the first because it allows for this integrated knowledge that I've been talking about. You want tools that allow for pushing the frontier of human expression. Here's the example of like power users of WordPress eventually stop using WordPress and use proper web dev tool like React.js, because WordPress is just it's a tool that's made for non-coder or people not very familiar with like HTML or CSS to do websites. But eventually, when you become professional or more fluent at using those tools, you like stop using the WordPress. You can use React.js. And I think it's important to allow for tools that like push the frontier of human expression, not only get to output faster. And I think so far it's like a bit unclear if Code Cloud is of this kind or not, whether it's actually allowed to make more complex, more like deeper software product, or if it's allowed to get to existing level of software product faster. I mean, maybe like WordPress. And finally, the goal is to make instruments that open new spaces for crafts, There are not many ways to use a hammer. Hammer is a tool for a specific solution, but there are a whole world of guitar playing. And I think that's the kind of tools we are like more interested in creating and creating practice around. So to illustrate what I mean by all those like design principles, and what like such a tool could look like, I've been working on Butterfly over the summer as a way to like try to concretize those arguments. So this is a short case study of an AI tool to support human growth. Of course, it's a rough prototype, but I think it exemplifies properties that like we care about. So first, what is Butterfly? The goal is to create a quiet space for early intuition to unfold. Um, so it's a whiteboard app that is trying to go against the legibility bias, where like some illegible intuition can lead to crucial advances. And the goal here is like to be authentic to your intuition. For instance, oh, there's something about value and knowledge being linked together. Oh yeah, maybe Jacob Collier is a good example, for instance, like, and maybe I will like unfold this like chain of thought in my mind. Like this is the kind of intuition I'm talking about, where like I would use maybe a notebook to like try to go through and jot down my intuition. And the goal here is to be authentic to this, like, oh, there's something about feeling. It's not about coming up with like great ideas, or not about solving any specific problem. It's about like the human being able to like unfold their thinking. So that's what the tool look like. You have a landing page where you can start with like noting your motivation. There's something about here, math types. What are types in mathematics? And I can then create cards like making a claim, like a real number is different from an integer, different types. And then I can make an example, like a real number is a type. This is an example of a type. And I can make cards like that. Cards are typed. For instance, if I have a question card, I can write a question. But if I use a claim card and I write a question, then you have an AI that will like check whether the type of the card matches the content. And here it throws an error because I wrote a question in a claim card. At the end of each session, after like 10 minutes of whiteboarding, of brainstorming, you have like some generated cards that will like that try to complement your thinking and will be placed at like the right place on the whiteboard. And then you have to like pick the card that will go to the next session. And by default, all the cards are moved to the history, the ones that you don't pick, or even the one you pick. Like the whole state of the whiteboard is pushed to history, and then you continue with the one you picked. Okay, so that's the presentation of the tool. And what I tried to do in this tool, which I did a few user panel interview, which like were promising. I plan to like publish the tool online in a few weeks. But what I wanted to show, even if the tool is not fully workable yet, is a few design principles in action. So first is to create affordances for the user. Like a saxophone, you cannot make all kind of music on a saxophone. They're like very precise set of music you want to do, very precise placing of your hands, etc. And here, like similarly, I want to create different type of affordances. At a macro level, I want to be able to have users say, oh, that's an idea I could butterfly. That's like an intuition I could like spend time, expand in this like new space created by the tool. And at a micro level, typed cards are giving thought structure. And you have like freedom in the constraint and the friction. And the goal here is like by creating types for your cards, you will like force your thinking into a structure that allow you to go further. Like this image of like, instead of like spreading thin, you want to like laser focus in one direction. And another big design principle was like making the background visible. We all have mental moves we use in the background of our thinking, and we develop our like tech stack from scratch alone. And when we like think of like different type of thoughts we have in our head, oh, this is good examples, those are bad examples. Like there's like a lot of taste and discernment happening in the background. And the hope with this tool is that by creating types that are like more fluid than like normal Python types, you'll be able to like share this like thinking tech that you have when you brainstorm with others. Another thing is like you could share a trace of intuition, raw chain of thought. Like for instance, alongside a paper, you could like share your like what was the chain of thoughts that like led you to have those ideas in the paper. And again, here's like the ability to like share stuff you practice alone to a network, so things can compound. Great, this was we are reaching the end. So to recap, this is my main arguments that like to show that we need to aim at humans still doing hard things no matter AI progress, because this is key to human growth, and that human growth is needed for good future, and technique can help but cannot replace a human having direct contact with the world, human growth. And as solution, community of practices are the right shape of social technical structure we should aim at, and we can, depending on the tool we are able to design, this will shape the practice and the community around it. Great, thank you all for listening, and thanks especially to the PIBBSS fellowship that allowed me to go through this argument, to develop this tool over the summer. It was a great experience, and I'm glad to conclude this work here today with you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. When you talk about human growth, are you mostly referring to like individual humans or humanity collectively?
Yeah, I think the two are very linked, and that for humanity to grow, you need some individual human to grow also. Yeah, so I think like I see individual human growth as like a necessary condition for collective human growth. And so in this way, like I'm focusing mostly on individual human growth because like easier to talk about, but eventually like I do care about collective growth. Yeah. Is this an answer to your question?
Well, I mean, following up on that, do you think that like the way that the way that attunement would help collective human growth would be via individual human growth? Or do you think that there's like humanity collectively has to have some kind of collective attunement?
Yeah, I think you're right that like I said that individual human growth is necessary for collective human growth, meaning like it's not sufficient, meaning like there are other ingredients you need on top of individual human growth for like the collective to grow, which I don't touch a lot into, and that are more linked to like before going to humanity, like what make a community of practice work? Like how do you like actually create group practice and good community health and able to like surface good practices over bad practices? I didn't dig into this topic. I think it's like really important. But I already focus on like making this like more narrow claim at individual level because I think it like changes things. But I'd be like super curious to like dig into that in the future, even though I'm like in some way I'm like it's so dependent. I don't know if there are like lots of like general claims to be made, and I'd be interested to like do more like understanding of like, oh, what does good community of practice look like in practice? Because that's the whole claim of the talk, is to like actually practice instead of just making abstract arguments. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a third question. So you give Janus and Pliny as like an example of kind of like the appropriate uh relation
Mm-hmm.
to AI. Do you have any like negative examples?
Uh, yeah. Um, I gave this example, this negative example of like the meta study, where like people use
Oh
a
yeah.
tool but like slows them down, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like it really feel like the tool was a like something went wrong in like designing this tool in the way people like use the tool, which is like pretty bad. So that's an example of like negative example. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks for the question.
Okay. I'll end the recording. Oh, Dushan?
Yeah, I have a question. You brought up the idea of like, well, abacus is kind of better than the calculator insofar as it helps us better think, and I fully agree. I think that's a great example. But I wonder if like the analogy kind of stops at like the kind of things we want AI to do. And I've been thinking about it like a bit now, and I'm not quite sure what my intuition says. Like, is it really the case that you can have, I don't know, I cannot have like, once I read a book, I can now use the intuitions from there, but like I cannot fully simulate like a much smarter person than me and what they would do or something. Like, I don't know. Is that like the right goal to be aiming for or something? I think is my question.
Yeah. What I hear in your question is like, do we really want to like be able to make a model of everything in the world in our head? Or are there things we are fine to let go and have more like calculator type tools? Is this
Right.
correct?
In a sense, calculator is just like much better than the abacus. Like you can do calculations that just the abacus is unable to do, and like maybe
Yeah.
only the simple things can also be good thinking tools, but all the complex things are too complex for us. That's why they're complex, right? And so like, are you saying let's not solve complex things or something, or obviously not, but that's the intention.
Yeah. I think like this is a very good point of like what are the things you're like fine having like calculator type tools, and what are the things you still want to like bang your head against and like integrate the knowledge.
Right.
Um, and I agree. I like fully agree. Like abacus should not be like the single goal. It should be like very important to realize when you're doing abacus like stuff or calculator type stuff. Uh, but this should not be the goal of like integrating everything. But though like yeah, I think it's a question of taste of like, for instance, like in Photoshop, like you don't have to learn about what does the Gaussian filter of your like image look like, but you kind of have to know what it will create on your image. So like you want to integrate the knowledge on like the stuff you try to influence. And it's fine to have like layers of abstraction where like you don't have to know how a processor works to be able to use Photoshop, which I think is great. Um, yeah, again, I cannot answer in full generality. We should not aim at like full abacus, but what you leave to abacus, what you leave to calculator is up to the community of practice to decide. Uh, yeah, maybe it's a little not satisfying, but like that would be my answer. Of like again, like my main talk is like there's no global answer, and like it's all about practice and like the specific cases because that's where like things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just like saying we should motivate people to make more abacus-like stuff and penalize
Yeah.
if you're making calculators, like not penalize infinitely, but penalize somewhat. I think that's like already a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk.
I agree.